You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Excited to be speaking with you today on our first house call of the weekend, where we are going to be answering all of your questions. All the questions that have been coming in over, let's say, the past 3 to 4 weeks. Excited, as always, to be able to share maybe a little bit of the knowledge, maybe a little bit of what I've seen work in my practice with you, so that you can at least get started, right? So that you can have a place to say, I've been given so much advice. I don't know what's true, what's not true. Can you help point me in that right direction? And that's really what our weekend house calls are all about. It's really a privilege for me to be able to see all of these questions come in and know that I maybe have a little bit of the ability to help set you on that right path. And then after that, you're going to either run the lab test, begin the protocol, seek out the specific practitioner, read the book, go to the gym, exercise, whatever it might be. And, that to me is really exciting. So without further ado, let's get right into today's questions. So the first question today is from Carol. Carol is asking, hi, Dr. Cabral. I want to start off by saying I absolutely love and very much appreciate the valuable content of your podcast. Started listening about 9 months ago, where I was searching for information on intermittent fasting. Found your podcast. I've been listening every day. A little background on me is I have a bachelor's in nutritional science, registered dietitian technician. The only thing separating me from an RD is it possible to get into a very expensive internship. All right, let's go. She's a little bit dismayed about what she learned at university. About a year ago, her husband, so she's seeking advice for her husband, went to a urologist. This was for a vasectomy, and prior to surgery, had blood tests showing that he had low testosterone. He was given a topical testosterone cream, and he followed up in about 3 months or so to check his levels. The supplement, now at the highest dosage, was working, but as last visit, it had stopped. Fast forward to about 6 weeks ago, and the MD prescribed testosterone injections every 2 weeks, and his level was still at 104, which is obviously very low. Since then, has been instructed to administer weekly. I feel so hopeless because if I should be so bold to say living with him is very stressful because his stress level is always on high. He's irritable, moody, and not always fun to be around. He's also so tired. He's always fallen asleep very easily, but says during the day his fatigue and energy levels come in waves. He eats well, follows the 80-20 rule, but when he is on with his calories and macros and so on. He works out about days a week. I think we missed a number there. Takes vitamins, maybe not the most potent, but at least it's something. I've tried telling him. Can you provide any guidance? Thank you so much, Carol. Okay, so yes, let's help you get started. The problem with conventional medicine, and yes, it's a big problem, is that a guy comes in and he might have a little bit low in energy. He might be lower mood, lower ambition, lower libido, lower all those things. And so they test his testosterone and they say, oh, well, you have lower levels of testosterone. Now, we didn't know what his testosterone was probably 3 years ago, so we don't even know if it's low or not because we don't know his baseline. Now, of course, it looks like your husband's is low, but then we don't take into account of why it might be low. Like, testosterone doesn't just plummet. I'm assuming your husband's in his 30s. I actually have no idea, but it sounds like you got your bachelor's, you just became a registered dietitian tech. I mean, I'm just guessing you're in your 30s. I have no idea, okay? So here's the deal. No guy should have low testosterone in his 30s. It's just something very, very wrong. So what do we do? Well, we look at testosterone. It's not far down, but it's pretty far down the hormone pathway, which means something went wrong with pregnenolone, DHEA, progesterone, or cortisol. Maybe there's a greater need for one of those, okay? But the other thing is, your husband looks like he has a problem with an actual holding on to of testosterone, which means unless they test his sex hormone binding globulin, is his testosterone being bound up, or have they tested his conversion from testosterone to dihydrotestosterone? Because if they don't, and he keeps getting pumped full of testosterone, synthetic testosterone, he could end up with prostate-based issues. He could end up with hair on his back and hair falling off his head. So I don't think that's worth it. And obviously, this current plan isn't working. And the reason it's not working is because it's not holistic. And when I say holistic, I don't mean that as H-O-L. I mean that as W-H-O-L. Whole, right? Holistic. Looking at the whole body. That's what we need to do. So, in my opinion, he should run a thyroid adrenal hormone test right away. I don't even know if I'd have him continue with the testosterone. But I can't give you advice over a podcast. I'm giving you a place to start. I'd probably use DHEA to give at least the precursor, let his body decide how they want to use it best, and then use the DHEA to be allowed to wean off and figure out really what's going on. Meaning, like, I want to run a thyroid adrenal hormone test to look at his thyroid levels, his cortisol levels, his progesterone, and see what's going on. But I would love to see the real him, off of testosterone. I know that will take a month or two to get out of his system, truly, but this is not the answer. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And then, we can go from there. So, okay, hopefully that helps. And obviously, I've done lots of podcasts on testosterone before. You can just literally type in low T, or you can type in testosterone at stephencabral.com/podcasts, and you and your husband can listen to those shows on how I help guys naturally increase their own testosterone. Okay, Tiana is up next. Hi, I have an autoimmune disease called minimal change disorder, and it has relapsed a couple times this last year. I'm sick of being on high doses of prednisone to keep it under control. I was wondering what naturopathic medicine recommends for this illness. Thanks, Tiana. Okay, so really clear that naturopathic medicine doesn't, true naturopathy. Now, there's a difference, okay? I love naturopathic medical schools, and I promote them wholeheartedly. I really do. Like, that is phenomenal. And so, if you're thinking about becoming an ND, a naturopathic doctor, go for it. Like, great. Look at one of the big schools, make your life easy, go with an accredited school, learn all there is to learn, and become a great naturopathic doctor that practices functional medicine and integrated medicine. Fantastic. But here's the thing. People ask me, like, am I a good candidate to see you? Am I good? I have this. I've been given this disease name. It doesn't matter to me because I'm not treating diseases. And a true naturopath, not meaning like traditional naturopathy, they didn't care what you had. And I don't care what people have either. I mean, all these new names are just given by, like, the name is either by, well, the doctor that discovered it or just whatever, decided to create an ICD-4, ICD-9 code to give to health insurance to then be able to pay for a medication or a lab test to test for it. But it doesn't matter because autoimmune diseases aren't the disease, meaning they're the symptoms, right? So what is minimal change disorder? Well, minimal change disorder is a kidney-based disorder. It's also called Nil disease, or I believe it's called Nil disease. Don't quote me on that. And it's the kidneys essentially have a difficult time filtering protein. Well, the challenge is why your kidneys having a difficult time filtering protein, and why do you have so much protein in your blood in the first place that your kidneys are filtering protein? Like, that's a better question to ask than why can't they filter protein? Because there's obviously an issue either with catabolism, so you should definitely test your LDN levels the next time you run a blood test. And you'll also want to run an organic acids test to look to see if there's any type of intestinal-based permeability. I would also run a food test to see if you have high levels of food-based proteins coming into your blood. If you have that, well, then we seal up the gut wall. And there's a reason why 90% of all autoimmune disease begins with a gut-based disorder. And that's because literally when you eat, you spill proteins, you spill amino acids in your bloodstream. Your liver has to try to clean it up. Your kidneys have to try to clean it up. And when it gets overwhelmed, well, that's when the immune system has to try to keep up as well. Like, it's literally marking these food-based proteins as antigens and trying to remove them from the body. That creates an inflammation storm. In this case, your kidneys. In other people's cases, their nervous system. In other people's cases, their joints. Other people's cases, their brain. I mean, just again, that's when genetics comes in. Genetics just shows you where your weak spots are. But genetics aren't the thing that causes the problem. The problem is the environment. So once we fix the environment, our genetics can cool down and sit there in the background, okay? That's called epigenetics. Our environment, diet, and lifestyle, 95% of all disease, cause our then genetic inborn issues to be exposed when put in the right environment. So hopefully that makes sense. For you, I would run the Big Five, or I would run a hair tissue mineral analysis to look at heavy metals, organic acids test to look at gut-based issues, and if you can, a food test as well. That's my recommendation. Okay, Christy's up next. Christy's writing in, "Hi, Dr. Cabral. Your podcast is such a fabulous resource, and we're enjoying your daily protocol. I have a question about my 9-year-old son. He has small white spots on his cheeks that are not noticeable most of the time. If he's very cold or hot, they show up more if all the blood rushes to his face, like if he hangs upside down at a park. If he goes out sledding in the cold, they fade as he gets warmer, but never completely fade. He's very fair-skinned. He's gotten sunburn a couple times. Pediatrician suggested some type of sun damage. Told us to moisturize and see a dermatologist if didn't clear. We will do that, but to be honest, I trust your opinion more. I want to be prepared when visiting the dermatologist if he tries to give us some kind of steroid cream, which may not be the best. Thank you." Chrissy, you're on the right track. Steroid creams are never the answer. What are they? Well, they're basically massive anti-inflammatories, right? Well, why the inflammation in the first place? I'm not saying they don't work. Of course they work. I'm not denying that. It's like, do antibiotics work? Sure, they work, right? They kill bacteria. Well, the unfortunate thing, though, is they also kill the good bacteria, which then means your nervous system actually gets weaker in the long run because you're missing a lot of your good bacteria. And that good bacteria just so happens to be 80% of your entire immune system. Whoops, something didn't go right there with that, So it's just short-term thinking. That's all it is. How can we get rid of the symptoms? How can the doctor be the hero? And then, I'm like the anti-hero. I tell people hey, it's going to take you probably like 6 to 12 weeks to get better. Some people 12 to 16 weeks. And then you go to your dermatologist like, hey, I'll give you this antifungal or steroid cream and you'll be better in a couple of days. Like, who's the hero? Certainly not me, right? But the truth is that I'm only here to share the truth with you. I don't care about this, short-term things. And I certainly am not looking for a medal, but I try to share this knowledge with you because this knowledge is not mine. I accumulated it over, let's say, 2 decades now. And so anything I share with you, I may have learned because of implementation in my private practice and assimilation of thousands of books and internships all over the world. But, I was taught, I read the books. I did the study. I interned all over the world, so I saw what worked. So I'm just literally trying to pay it forward. And I can tell you, since I've seen this many times, so the white spots can be different things, meaning like this can be a vasodilation-based issue, meaning like, okay, improper blood flow to the skin. That's always possible, right? That's usually some type of electrolyte or mineral-based imbalance. So the imbalance is essentially looking at improper sodium to potassium, improper calcium to magnesium. We call this oxidation-based issue. So like kind of in the sympathetic nervous system or the parasympathetic nervous system. Really great. Dr. Harvey Blyer, I believe, is one of the people that I've read before his work. So that's one possibility, okay? You can actually see your oxidation rate on a hair tissue mineral analysis. It tells you if you're a fast oxidizer or a slow oxidizer. However, these little white spots, if they're more pronounced in the summertime, if your son gets a tan, it's a really good sign that this is a fungal-based or yeast-based infection on the skin. You can look this up. Just go to Dr. Google, just google.com, I'm just making fun of, and type in yeast spots on face or white yeast spots on skin. And I'm sure something will pop up, okay? This is typically an internal candida or yeast overgrowth manifesting itself as an external rash on the skin. These white spots have also been correlated with a low level of zinc, just like white spots on the fingernails can be. But you have to also keep in mind, that's because zinc gets used up because it's an antagonist to yeast, which means your body actually uses zinc to fight yeast and candida overgrowth. It's very, very interesting. Zinc is one of those products. I've talked about it a lot. I really have, because its ability to detoxify, build hormones, work for your immune system, rebuild tissues is unbelievable. Really, like it's one of those top products. It honestly is. And so if I mention it a lot, it's because I work at a foundational level, meaning like, I could recommend boswellia to you. I could recommend, things like curcumin and things like that. And they're all great, right? But they're not foundational, meaning the body's not missing curcumin. It's not missing turmeric. It's not missing ginger. Like those things are great, but it can be missing zinc, right? Because zinc is one of those essential minerals that our body needs for tissue repair and the immune system and everything else. Hormones, you name it, testosterone, we talked about that before. So this is what I would do. I would run an organic acids test and a hair tissue mineral analysis. Now, keep in mind, I'm always open, and I recommend this in my private practice all the time. go see your dermatologist, go see your specialist, go get blood work run. There's nothing wrong with that. The more opinions, the better. But always ask, is the recommendation they're giving me working at a foundational level, or is it treating the symptoms? By running an organic acids test, you'll be able to see, is there a yeast overgrowth? So that's great. And then you'll look at B vitamin levels and bacterial levels in the gut. And by running a hair tissue mineral analysis, you'll actually be able to see if there's high levels of copper. And those high levels of copper could actually be pushing down zinc. And then you can also see if there's any electrolyte imbalances. So I recommend the organic acids test and the hair tissue mineral analysis. Hopefully that helps, Christy. Kat's up next. Kat's asking, what books would you recommend for someone looking into starting to read more about Ayurvedic medicine? Functional medicine, natural healing. I would love listening to your podcast and would love some insight on the books to start off with. All right, Kat, I have been recommending books on Ayurvedic medicine all the way since episode 30 of the Cabral concept. And we are on episode 743. So for everybody, all the show notes today, please go to stephencabral.com/743. And for the show notes for every single other podcast I've ever done over the past 2 years, go to stephencabral.com/podcast. There you will find literally every podcast I've ever done. You can search all the podcasts for things like Ayurvedic books. And if you type in Ayurveda or Ayurvedic book, you will actually find all of the podcasts that I've recommended books on. But I'll make this easy for you. So I recommended books on episode 30, and there's a bunch of other episodes, but I also did a recap on episode 616. So what did I recommend? Well, basically, make it really easy for you. Vasantlad, Vasantlad. Okay. He is an Ayurvedic doctor from India that came to the United States, I believe, in the early 80s. It might have been the 70s. He taught many of the doctors here about Ayurveda. He created a master's program that I almost entered, but I wanted to go back for my doctoral degree. It was semantics. I wanted to be able to, what I felt, maybe affect change on a deeper level if I did that. And the truth is, the bottom line is this. My mentor studied under Vasantlad, like she was a direct student, and she wrote his textbooks. She wrote the Ayurvedic textbook 1, Ayurvedic textbook 2, and then the Ayurvedic textbook 3 came out. She did not write that. Keep in mind, this is the person that got me well. She said, you should go back to this school. You should get your doctoral degree. You should do internships in Ayurveda. I'm an obsessive personality. She never said, Steve, you should go to India and Sri Lanka and China and go study all over the world. She did not recommend that. But when I do something, and that's why I'm careful to actually, I'll tell you a little inside scoop about me. I'm very careful about getting into new hobbies and crafts and sports and all of those things. Like I won't allow myself to play video games or anything like that because I do have that obsessive personality. And people are like, oh, well, you could change that. You talk about that all the time. And I agree. But I like that. Like it's not something that I want to change because the things that I want to channel it into, I'm able to do that. I just have to be careful of what I allow myself to start to get into because then I really want to know. I want to know it at such a deep level. Now, the reason I mention this is because that is why I went overseas. That's not for everybody, nor should they. But Vasantlad's books, if you really want to know Ayurveda on a deep level, read all 3 of his textbooks, okay? Those are listed on episode 616. Great intro, though. A great intro book is by Dr. Robert E. Svoboda. And I can actually hear my mentor, Dr. Pete, saying to me right now, she used to call him Robbie. Like literally, I guess she knew him well. She's like, oh, you're going to love Robbie's book. And I always like, who's Robbie? Well, it's Dr. Robert Svoboda, really one of the foremost Americans that became an Ayurvedic doctor in the United States. So, well, who am I like top picks for books or authors? Dr. Vasantlad, Dr. Svoboda, and Dr. David Frowley. Okay, those are 3 people. So read all of their books. Like, honestly, they're tremendous books. Now, there are other people out there. So I'm not discrediting anyone else that's written on Ayurveda. I hope to not be doing that. But my mentor, Dr. Pete, said, you should study Dr. Svoboda, Dr. Frowley, and Dr. Lad. So what did I do? I listened to her because she was the person who got me well. She pointed me on the right path. She combined ancient Ayurvedic healing with state-of-the-art functional medicine lab test. It's not a surprise that my practice today is ancient Ayurvedic healing and modern lifestyle-based medicine combined with state-of-the-art lab testing, right? And genetic testing. Like it's not a surprise. It didn't come out of nowhere, right? I learned it like this is what I should be doing. And then I just said, you know what? I'm going to take this to the highest level possible. And that's it. And that's just because of my personality and how I feel I'm best able to serve the world. Meaning like if this is a little quirk about me and it's something that I can get into, why not use something that could be a negative with this, kind of obsessive personality? And why not channel it into something good? And that's why a lot of our negatives we see as really negative, but they don't have to be. Meaning like I can, again, just having an obsessive based personality, I can put it and channel it into something good. And that's why I just feel like for all of us, we always think about all of our flaws. Well, a lot of our flaws could actually be flip-flopped in order to serve others. And I just feel like that's the best way to look at it. So hopefully that makes sense. And hopefully that answers your question on really definitively who I recommend, Dr. Lad, Dr. Svoboda, and Dr. Frowley. Great people, amazing books. And don't worry about if the book was written 20 years ago. Ayurvedic medicine started 6,000 years ago. Nothing's changed. It really hasn't. So check those books out. They are a wealth of knowledge, and I'll be studying Ayurveda for the rest of my life. So anyone who's taken a crash course in Ayurveda over 6 months, just remember, you're just getting a taste. It is something that you should just learn as much about and just take your time. Take your time. Really, really great place to study. So let's do this. Let's keep it at that for today in terms of answering questions. And that's because I just feels like a natural stopping point for today's show. So what I want to do right now is invite you to tune back tomorrow. So our second podcast of the weekend will actually have Carol, Tiana, Christy, Kat. We have, Kat asked, I think, the same question twice. Nope, those were today's. Okay, my mistake. We will be moving on from those specific questions and answering Jessica's, Annie's, Bernard's, Kat's, and a couple others. So invite you to tune back tomorrow. Really excited. There'll be some on SIBO. There will be some on body type, intermittent fasting. So we've got some great things to cover. Really excited about that. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. And as always, if any of the information helped you, maybe you can share it with someone else and it might be able to also serve them. Thank you so much, and I look forward to speaking with you tomorrow. Did you know that the body really only becomes sick or imbalanced in only 2 ways? Over time, you become deficient in vital nutrients, and you also accumulate toxins internally and from the environment. As those nutrients diminish and you increase your total toxic load, your body then begins to show the first signs of dis-ease. It's actually quite predictable, and the good news is that if we know how you began to fill up that proverbial rain barrel, we also know how to empty it to begin the healing process. I was fortunate enough to learn this ancient healing process from my mentor after suffering from debilitating diseases for close to a decade. It was only when I began to implement these techniques did I finally overcome my illnesses and go on to live a life of energy and vitality that I now enjoy. I'd like to share with you now what I discovered after traveling all over the world and how to combine the best of ancient healing wisdom with state-of-the-art science. Allow me to teach you exactly how I've been able to help over 250,000 people to empty their rain barrel and begin to transform their body and lives into what they've always hoped they could be. To get your copy of the international bestseller, The Rain Barrel Effect, simply go to stephencabral.com/rainbarrel.